When I started out as a photographer, I'd scroll down Instagram and see what other photographers were doing and how their photos looked, and then I'd look at mine. I would always see other photographers shoot these really clean photos with minimalist composition and really nice framing and colors. You know, photos packaged really neatly in a box. Bangers for the gram. But the photos I was taking were not that. They were lopsided, messy, and blurry, and overall, I just felt like they looked amateur. Which they were. For ages, all I wanted was to be able to shoot clean photos, and after some learning and experimenting, I did finally get the hang of it. And I really love this aesthetic. In fact, some of my favorite work I've ever shot has been with this aesthetic. But when I worked like this, I started to get really obsessed with perfection. I'd spend ages making sure that all of my horizons were perfectly straight, that I had colors in the photo that were following the 60-30-10 rule, and I would sometimes not take photos that I couldn't figure out a way to frame up perfectly. And for a while, that worked great. But as I've grown older, learned more and more about what I like, and developed my taste as a photographer as well as back pain, I've realized that the clean look is just one option, and sticking to it so strictly wasn't just forcing my creativity through a checklist, but it was also actually making some of my images worse. I think putting so much effort and value into making my photos look clean or professional was really holding me back, and I think it's holding a lot of other photographers back too. So, in this video, I'll share what I've learned, how I use chaos and mess to make my photos better, and why you should take photos incorrectly too. And at the end, I'll share my biggest hack to immediately add some chaos even when there isn't any in the real world. First, let's clear something up. What the hell do I mean by chaos and mess? And isn't that a bad thing? Like, doesn't that just mean I'm going to go back to taking those amateur looking photos from before? No, not really. Well, maybe a little bit. We'll get to that. When we talk about messy and chaotic photos, we're talking about photos that have a lot going on inside them. There's lots of stuff happening. There might be lots of different colors or different layers. It doesn't have to be protests or concerts like I often shoot. Your kids are probably the most chaotic people you'll ever meet, or your pets, or if you're young, your friends. And I think a really important question we should be asking ourselves as photographers is, how do we take photos that best suit them? Maybe the answer is to take photos that look like snapshots, or the composition is wonky, or maybe they're just photos of actual chaos, but there are definitely chaotic photos that work and chaotic photos that really don't work. So how can we tell the difference? The first and maybe most important thing you can do to take chaotic photos that still really work is to make sure you're not confusing anybody's eyeballs. When we look at a photo, our eyes are going to aimbot themselves to text that we read, faces, and the brightest and most colorful parts of the image. That's just how our caveman brains work. My caveman brain would make me very happy if you clicked somewhere down there and subscribed. And I think one of the most rewarding parts of a chaotic photo is that it really invites us to spend more than 1 second looking at it. There's loads of little stories going on inside of the photo, and nowadays when we spend all our time on Instagram looking at photos for half a second, that's quite important. Now, I think the best way to do this without being overwhelming or noisy is to make sure that there is one subject that everyone is going to look at first, and then explore the rest of the frame. Even better if that subject gives some context as to what's going on, or doesn't and creates this deep, powerful curiosity in the viewer. After all, we're not just trying to take photos that are aesthetically pretty, right? Like, we're basically trying to tell a visual story. Now, this doesn't mean you need to bring a spotlight with you to actually highlight one specific person in the crowd. Instead, I like to fall back to the very basic stuff: leading lines, rule of thirds, blurry backgrounds. Just using really simple visual tricks like this to get one person facing the camera sticking out of the crowd on a third, for example, is a really great way to make a chaotic photo easier to absorb. I also really like to use light to create visual hierarchy. We know that people will usually look at the brightest or darkest parts of an image first, and so whether I'm using flash or just the sun, I definitely keep it in mind. But another quite different way that you can make chaotic photos that are really immersive and attention-grabbing is to let go of all of your artistic perfectionism. Shoot really quick and dirty, snapshot style photos. Immediately, you're saying to me, Hunter, that doesn't make any sense. How can not trying be a technique for taking good photos? But if you think about it, if we want to take chaotic photos, then it makes sense that we should shoot in a chaotic way, right? And more than that, if you're relaxing a little bit and you're okay with it not being perfectly in focus or perfectly sharp, then you can instead put your energy towards focusing on the moment. And if you think about it, having some blur often makes a lot of sense from a narrative point of view if we're taking photos of something that's very fast paced, right? And I think that's the real key to the snapshot strategy, is that instead of trying to control the chaos and organize everything nicely, let it get out of control. And then when people look at the photo, it'll help them to feel that chaos. It'll help to tell the story that everything was moving fast, that there was a lot going on. If your photo is perfectly squared away and composed, then it might end up looking a bit sterile, a bit lifeless. One really useful and easy way to make a photo more chaotic is by shooting with a slower shutter speed, which I did a video on recently, but a big issue with slow shutter speeds is that they can be quite unpredictable, which is why I've teamed up with Framer, the sponsor of today's video, to make you a reference website, slowshutterspeeds.com, where I've got loads of examples of slow shutter photos with the exact settings I used so that you know what's going to happen. Framer is the perfect tool for this. It's so quick and easy to publish websites, and not just a 2002 spec Hello World either. Framer have a massive library of templates, and they're adding new ones all the time that are both functional and pretty good looking. So no matter what you're into, you'll be able to create something fresh and unique. For slowshutterspeeds.com, I found a template that's nice and minimal so that you can really focus on the images themselves. This would also work really nice for a portfolio if you don't already have one. Yes, I'm talking to you. And all I had to do with mine was swap out the fonts and colors to make it look and feel a bit more me, and then upload everything. The whole thing took me maybe an afternoon. And the extra fun part is that, especially now after Framer's latest updates, it's more powerful than ever with advanced analytics tools that are still really easy and simple to use, easy localization so that you can share your ideas with people all over the world in their own language. There's never been a better time to share your art or your ideas or your perspective online, and I reckon you should do so by publishing your next website with Framer. There's a link in the video description, and if you use it to sign up for free, you'll get 25% off your first 3 months. A massive, massive thank you to Framer for their continued support of this channel and our community, and of course to you for watching. But aside from creating an image that's really immersive for our viewers to get lost in, there's another reason I think you should sometimes deliberately look for and shoot chaotic photos, and it's a little existential. Let me explain what I mean. I think art is a way to communicate and tell stories, and I think one of the reasons it's so important to us as humans is that it helps us to understand our own lives and our own stories. And in our real lives, we have ups and downs and twists and turns, and not everything is always golden hour ISO 100 perfect. In fact, quite a lot of the time we have times that are chaotic, times that are difficult and confusing, and so I think it makes a lot of sense to create art that feels that way too. I love a nice minimalist golden hour clean photo, but if that's all you're shooting, it feels a little bit like you're only looking at one side of the coin. You don't have to shoot miserable photos by any means, but I think that there's a lot that you can learn both about photography and about yourself by deliberately deciding to explore the opposite of what you know will get likes on Instagram. Speaking of Instagram, there's a link below to mine. You should follow me so we can keep in touch. And if you're a Discord person, there's a link to that too. Loads of really cool people in there sharing their work, helping each other out. You should definitely sign up. Remember earlier I told you that I had a hack for really quickly and easily sprinkling some chaos into your photos? It's so super simple, but it works so well every single time, and it's kind of addictive. Edges. Just put something interesting right on the edge of your photo, or even appearing out of the edge of the photo. This does two things that I find super rewarding. Is one, it immediately upsets the balance of your composition. Like a lot of the time when we're trying to take clean photos, we're trying to make sure that we're making really even use of all of our space and creating photos that feel like they don't have a big dead zone in one specific area. But when you stick something right on the edge, it flips that completely and disorients the viewer for half a second. It says, Look carefully because this isn't what you were expecting. But also, and I think much more fun, is that it explodes the photo past the edges. When you make it really obvious that there's more stuff happening outside of the photo, behind you and around you, it makes it much easier to communicate that sense of chaos and unpredictability. It makes the viewer wonder what else is happening. It makes them imagine what it would be like if they were standing where you were standing. And I think it's a really fun way to spice up your composition. If you'd like to learn about why shutter speed isn't always what it seems to be, watch this next. Stay hydrated and create art.